Hello, my name is Aleda Chen. I'm the Associate Dean and a Professor of Pharmacy Practice at Cedarville University School of Pharmacy, and today I will be talking about Someone Like Me, reflecting the beauty of God's kingdom in our workforce. Just as a disclosure, I do have funded grants from Merck as part of their investigator-initiated grant program. However, I do not discuss any sort of product or vaccinations in this presentation. So what are the learning outcomes of this presentation? Well, one, I'm going to talk about the importance of diversity in the workforce. So really, why are we talking about this issue? Secondly, I'm going to evaluate challenges and opportunities related to workforce diversity. And third, I'm going to propose strategies to enhance workforce diversity. Now, in my full presentation at CCHF, it will be workshop style, so participants will be able to go through a worksheet and answer these questions and work alongside me. However, if you are doing this virtually, then there is a worksheet posted in the conference app, so you can follow along and pause the video at relevant times and complete this yourself. And I'd be happy to interact with you if you have any questions. First, I'd like to start off with a story of where I work. So this is my 12th year at Cedarville University, which is a private faith-based institution in Cedarville, Ohio. So Cedarville, Ohio, as you can see, is nearby Dayton, halfway in between Columbus and Cincinnati. The community itself is a small town and a rural setting. And the university now houses about 4,000, well over 4,000 undergraduate students plus a number of graduate programs. So, like many of you, you might have gone to an institution like this, a small private institution, and understand the typical student demographic. However, this is not the demographic of the School of Pharmacy. During my time here in the School of Pharmacy, I have been blessed to interact with students from a broad variety of cultures and countries of origin, where English is their preferred language and where another language is their preferred language. God has brought us a number of students from a variety of different backgrounds, and in some of our groups of students, we have almost 50% who are non-white and represent a variety of backgrounds, and our average ranges somewhere between 25 to 36% of our students on any given year not being a white, predominantly white student. And so this is kind of who we are. So my story and my presentation today talks a little bit about why this matters for us and why we think it's really important to have diversity within our health professions workforce and some of the lessons we've learned along the way. And I'll also share a little bit about my personal story throughout as well. So diversity in the workforce, why is it important? Well, I think for many of us, particularly if we are listening to this session, we would probably all agree that diversity in the workforce is important. But I'll share some relevant statistics. First, we all recognize that being prepared to work with a diverse patient population is a great starting point. If we look at U.S. statistics, they continue to change. So originally, it's a predominantly white majority population, but we know that as years will progress, we're becoming more of a majority-minority country where there are multiple groups that are represented within the United States, with Hispanic Americans being a large growing segment and African Americans being a large growing segment. So our patients will not always reflect our same cultural or racial ethnic background. So we need to make sure that we prepare our students, and we as providers are also really well prepared to interact with patients who might be from a different background. So the first element that we might want to think through is how we interact culturally. Now there's a broad variety of terms that we can use here. Common terms we might see in the literature are cultural humility, cultural competency, and cultural responsiveness. So I think it's important that we talk through some of these terms as a starting point. So cultural humility, that is the concept that a person has a lifelong commitment to evaluating themselves and critiquing themselves to learn about their own culture and their own health beliefs and how that impacts how they provide care, as well as to learn about other healthcare beliefs, other cultures, other different people groups. So that's really what cultural humility is. It's the idea that you're willing to be a lifelong reflector and learner. I think those are the key elements I love about that particular definition. So cultural competency is a term that's frequently used in the literature, frequently discussed among healthcare providers, and has really the idea of being aware of your own cultural beliefs and values, so that, again, a self-reflector element, and how they may be different from other cultures, and really how you can build and grow so that you can work well with other cultures. Now, some people may believe that that definition is problematic, and it can be if you view it as a stopping point. I'm going to become competent and then I don't have to learn anything more about cultures. Well, the reality is I don't think we ever achieve competency, but the idea is that we're trying to progress towards being able to learn more and reflect the cultures we work with. And that's kind of the concept of cultural competency. So the last term that I want to go over is the idea of cultural responsiveness. So cultural responsiveness is the idea of understanding different cultural elements, recognizing biases, and looking beyond those differences. So essentially being a really good listener and looking beyond those differences to be able to work with people who have different cultures than your own. So all three of these terms really get at the heart of the key messages to prepare ourselves to work with people who might be from a different cultural, racial, ethnic background, whatever it may be. And that is having humility, so being humble and recognizing that you don't know everything. Secondly, being self-reflective to know what you believe, what your background is, what you think, what your identity is. And then thirdly, showing an openness and a willingness to learn and grow and work with others who may think differently or may come from different backgrounds than your own. And if we can prepare our students, and if we as healthcare professionals can prepare ourselves to do this well, then that goes a long way in patient care, because we aren't always going to be able to provide patient care to certain groups that we feel most comfortable with, but we need to work to embrace everyone as part of this. And so that's just kind of some key starting points here. But we do know that there are gaps within our workforce. There's a lack of diversity in health professions. It has gotten better in recent years, but there's still a long ways to go. If you look at call-outs from different health professions organizations, they continue to say that we need to increase the diversity within health professions, particularly in terms of racial diversity within it, or ethnic group diversity. Gender diversity has had a fair amount of gap closure, although not in every area. But particularly among minority populations, we still see underrepresentation of African or African American cultures, as well as Hispanic cultures, and several different other patient groups in terms of diversity. And so we see those recent call-outs. We also see it from patient groups. If you look in the literature from different cultural groups, they're saying they wish that there were more healthcare providers that come from their communities. And so patients really desire a more diverse workforce so that there's a better understanding among healthcare professionals about the role culture plays and health beliefs play within healthcare. And also just understanding community needs as well. So that is a current gap that still exists within our workforce. And if we continue to look at the literature, we see that the more culturally competent a healthcare provider is, or the more culturally concordant, being of the same cultural healthcare provider is, typically patients experience better outcomes. We don't fully understand all the reasons why they experience better outcomes, but it is definitely a very important factor to patients and something we need to recognize. And given that this is the CCHF conference, I don't think that anyone would disagree that the biblical perspective is of diversity. God created us in His image, and There are so many beautiful cultures and races and different groups represented within that. And we can even see in Revelation, right, people from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, praising the Lord. And for many of us, this is just one example of a Bible verse, but our healthcare should reflect the beauty and diversity of God's creation, which is all of us. And so we want to see people from all different groups as a part of our healthcare team because we can learn and grow from one another. However, we still face challenges and opportunities to enhancing the diversity of our workforce, and part of this session is going to overview that. So if you're participating with me virtually, this is a great opportunity to pull up that worksheet and to kind of list out what challenges do you face regarding workforce diversity at your location, whether it's you're at an academic institution, so you're looking at your student population, or if you're in a clinic, or if you're in a hospital, what challenges do you face? But I don't want us to just focus on challenges. I think it's really important to also examine opportunities. So at the same time, while you're thinking through challenges, I'd also recommend that you think through opportunities that still exist or that could exist to enhance workforce diversity there. So again, great time to pause if you're joining me online, and because I'm going to move on to the next slide. So again, what did you identify? So my story at Cedarville University. If you notice, my opportunities and my challenges almost completely coincide. That's really intentional. The reason that is intentional in this presentation is because our challenges are also our ways that we've been able to recruit a fairly diverse student population. So here's our first challenge and opportunity. We're a faith-based institution, and we're a faith-based institution that actually asks students to affirm that they believe in Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and ask them to hold to a set of agreed beliefs, at least, and behaviors that they need to display as a student. So that can be a challenge because, for example, if a student is of a different faith, they cannot become a student here unless they decide to become a Christian. So that is a challenge because we cannot recruit any student from any racial or ethnic background that we would like that has a different faith. However, it's also a great opportunity. Christianity is not limited to the United States nor to one racial or ethnic population. As we talked about earlier, Revelation, right? People from all nations, everywhere. A lot of our students have come from places that have vibrant faith communities that exist outside of the United States. A large portion of our students actually come from Africa, from countries like Nigeria and Ghana. And so to hear their stories of faith in their communities is really inspiring. And again, it's a great opportunity because those students understand the value of integrating their faith and their work. We are actually a really great fit for them because we believe in integrating those two things as well. So we actually resonate really well in terms of that faith-based culture. Another challenge is our location, and I'm going to kind of leave this as a challenge. Even though we are located between Cincinnati and Columbus, students who come from those areas would have to commute or do commute somewhere between an hour to an hour and a half, depending on traffic and what area they are from in those cities, to come to our institution. And the town of Cedarville is very small. There's not a lot of diversity in terms of access to different food or even different denominations and things like that. So we are a unique setting. We're a small rural location, so many students to come here do have to actually transport their lives or move here. And so that can be a real challenge to come to our institution in terms of getting a diverse population that is not necessarily the same as our surrounding community. I will argue, though, it is also an opportunity. So we have a number of diverse patient groups that are located in the greater Dayton area and a number of urban settings that have a high diverse population. So we just sometimes have to be a little bit more intentional about getting the word of Cedarville and the School of Pharmacy and pharmacy as a great health profession out there. But part of the benefit of being a private institution is we are able to maintain a small class size. And I think that's a great opportunity to recruit a diverse student population. We call ourselves a family, and I know that is maybe a little bit nerdy or something like that, but we really do believe in a family environment. So we do life together as a school of pharmacy. And so we have a small class size. We have a lot of early intervention with students. We provide a lot of student support for academics, or even if English is not their preferred language, or their first language, if you want to call it, depending on which term you prefer, EAL, ESL, or even preferred language. We provide a lot of support in those areas. So we're able to recruit a more diverse population because we can provide support for them to be ready to engage within the health profession. And I think that's been a really great benefit of our institution. We are a new school at a private institution, which is both a challenge and an opportunity. It's a challenge because we don't have a long history of, at least within pharmacy, of developing pharmacists, so not everybody knows about us. We're not necessarily a recognizable name. At least when I first started, we definitely weren't. Now we are gaining more and more momentum in that area as we've had multiple classes of alumni graduate and do really great things. But it's also an opportunity. With a new school at a private institution, it's been a great opportunity to perhaps look at some different students who others may not pick in the first round because maybe they don't have a 4.0 GPA, or maybe their trajectory of getting to pharmacy school is a little bit more varied. They've had some life circumstances. Maybe they struggled with homelessness, or maybe they've had to spread out their education across multiple years. And whilst many institutions would definitely consider them, we've been really able to kind of carve out a niche of looking at the student who would be a great pharmacist, but might need a little bit more of that small class size and support to get there. And so that's been a great opportunity for our school, as well as a challenge. And you know, you've probably got something similar at your own place. Maybe you don't have a problem of location. Everyone wants to move there or live there, right? Or they already do live there. But maybe you've got a problem of people not knowing the word about your institution or your clinic, or maybe it's just a very similar area, or whatever it may be. There's a lot of different reasons why you could have challenges, but remember that a lot of times those challenges also present great opportunities to kind of change your thinking about what you can do with it. So we're going to transition to some strategies to enhance the diversity of our workforce. So our story. So I started at Cedarville in 2011, a year before we launched our pharmacy program. So in the fall of 2012, we had our first cohort of students enter the program, and I didn't expect or anticipate to see quite the diversity we did and the students from all the different cultures. But along the way, I've been blessed that they have allowed me to spend time with them and listen to their stories and learn from them. And so these are some of the things that I've learned from them. No reflection on me, just reflection on my work with them. So the first thing I would say is the importance of listening. So I am white. I grew up in Ohio. I had a fairly traditional educational trajectory. I have different elements that make me unique, but those are just some of my characteristics. I don't always come from the same cultural background as my students, but I do have some unique elements of my story where I'm in a biracial marriage, and I have learned my husband is not from the same country as me, and we have different cultural backgrounds, and so that's been a great opportunity for me to listen and learn. So those same principles apply with my students. After we've had some years here working with our students, we started hosting listening sessions for students of different backgrounds, or any background. We don't want to exclude anyone's experience as part of this, but students of different backgrounds, and just share their stories. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? What can we do better? How can we make this a safe space for you to learn and grow? Do you feel valued? Do you feel like you're a part of the School of Pharmacy? And those listening sessions, I said almost nothing in them. At times, they brought me to tears at times, either a joy or, just sadness for different things people experience over the course of their lives. But it was a great opportunity for us to listen and then use that information that we gleaned from that to continue to enhance how we support students from all different backgrounds at our institution. And that brings me to the next point, finding ways to provide support. So over the years, we've made sure that we've continued to provide people of all different backgrounds to be here to support the students, whether it's faculty that we've been able to hire that come from similar backgrounds, or alumni who come from those backgrounds and want to continue to engage with our students, local preceptors, pharmacists, other healthcare providers in our community that come from a variety of different backgrounds, but making sure we can provide support, showing examples of healthcare professionals who have done great things that are from similar backgrounds, just finding ways that we can provide support, even support in terms of the social determinants of health, figuring out transportation issues or food access issues or monetary support or whatever it may be, making sure we figure out where our student needs are and providing those support so that everyone has an equal chance, if they can work hard in our program, of successfully becoming a pharmacist. I think another thing is recognizing potential. Not everyone's potential can be read from a piece of paper, but people can do amazing things when given the opportunity. So recognizing from people's stories and their ability to persevere and overcome who might be a really great pharmacist and who would be a great asset to go back to their communities and serve, or find a new community and serve that community. So that's been a really great endeavor. And again, it's listening and learning as part of this. When I first started, I wasn't always able to recognize all of that potential, but learning from my colleagues, being humble and admitting that I don't know these things and learning from others has been a really great opportunity. Enhancing the pipeline. So one of the things also is we're starting younger. And I think this is something that translates really well into workplaces. So obviously in your workplace, if you're not an academic institution, you can listen to people at your workplace and see what are we doing well, what are things we can improve on. We can provide support, right? We can recognize the potential of others who might be really great at doing something. Perhaps it's a staff member at your institution or your clinic that might make a really great nurse or pharmacist or physician or nurse practitioner or physician assistant, or insert profession here. I can't name them all. You can do that at your clinic and your institution, but you can also work at enhancing the pipeline. So connect with a local high school, connect with people who are getting ready to make decisions about their next career step, and encourage them to consider somewhere in the healthcare profession. We're partnering with our School of Education and our dean there to get into local schools and share with students who have an interest in science about healthcare professions and why that might be a really great fit for them. Enhancing the pipeline, helping them understand the opportunities that exist for students of all different backgrounds. A really key element, I believe, is loving God and loving others. When we live out this principle that Jesus related to us, it changes so much of this story. I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to make mistakes. Everyone's going to make mistakes, right? But acting in love, acting and showing care and compassion, listening, learning, growing, being humble, looking at the example of Christ, I think that's another way that we can alter our workforce when we try and be more like him. And then finally, I would say our students who are in our program or who have graduated from our program are our best ambassadors. And the same for your workplace. So if you want more great people to come into your workplace who are from all different backgrounds, well, the people that work at your workplace are your best recruiters because they share their stories of their experiences. And it's so much more, it often has a lot more meaning when it comes from someone who's not in leadership, someone who's worked for you, who currently works for you, or something like that. That is often your best asset for recruitment. And I would say that's something that you could consider doing at your institution. These are some things that have worked at ours, and I will tell you, we're still listening, we're still learning, we're still growing. We're not afraid of these conversations, and we want to be able to learn well and grow well. Now, if you're joining me in the virtual setting, this is a great opportunity for you to pull back out that worksheet and take your barriers and opportunities before and think through what can you do to change your trajectory. Maybe you've got a really great trajectory at your workplace. Great. But what can you do to further enhance it then if that question is not well worded for you? Great opportunity to pause and work on your worksheet before we come back to the end of this presentation. So again, what did you identify? And if you have questions or thoughts that you'd like to share with me, I'm happy to interact with you over email. I really want this to be the final note on my presentation here today. When I first had discussions about giving this, I was a little apprehensive because I have gotten asked this question, what are you doing at Cedarville University School of Pharmacy that your students are so diverse? Half a dozen to a dozen times over the last year. Whenever external guests come in, they ask me that question because I'm often hosting them. And I always pause for a moment and think, how do I answer this question? Because there's a part of me that says, I don't know. But here's my biggest takeaway. The glory goes to Christ. It's not me at all. I think that if we're going to enhance the diversity of our workforce, one, we need to pray about it. We need to have open hearts to listen to what God is telling us, see what the Bible is encouraging us to do, all of those things. We can absolutely use the tips that I've listed here, and you probably have more of your own that you could share. I just scratched the surface of a few ideas. But the reality is, in the end, what my workforce looks like is not me, it's Christ. And letting Christ work through me and in me is the best I can do. Showing the example, or trying to mimic his example of listening, encouraging, supporting, loving him and loving others as part of this is really my best approach to enhancing the diversity of our workforce. And I hope and pray that, if that's one of the goals you have for your institution or your clinic, that perhaps maybe some of the things I went over today will help you think through how you might do it. I will say one last thing is find a few champions for this. There do need to be a few people that really take ownership of this and support it thoroughly. And it doesn't have to be just the people who are the diversity at your workplace. I'm always concerned for my faculty and who are of diverse backgrounds that they're the default choice. If I really want to see a diverse workforce, I have to step up as a leader at my program and as someone who is of the current majority background, being white, to care about this and be intentional about it. And so find your champions and encourage them to keep going and keep pursuing this, even when you don't maybe have success right away. Because as long as you're trying to serve Christ in this and you have a heart to continue to grow these efforts and work at it, we're really living out what Christ calls us to do. So, time today, and if you have questions, this is my contact information, and I would be happy to dialogue with you further. And here are a few of my references. So, thank you.